Pork Week, paying tribute to the pork producers who bring lean and nutrient-rich pork to your table. Coverage brought to you by Merck Animal Health and the National Pork Board.
Hello and welcome to Farm Journal Live. I'm Farm Journal editor Clinton Griffiths here from our newsroom here in northern Indiana as we bring you Pork Week coverage for Farm Journal's pork. Of course, so many great things going on this week, but the biggest highlight is the return of World Pork Expo to Des Moines, Iowa. Now, it's been a couple of years since 2018 that we had a full World Pork Expo in Des Moines. The event canceled in 2019 due to African swine fever concerns, and in 2020 because of COVID. Now, MPPC is expecting thousands of producers, industry professionals to attend this week, including a trade show with more than 700 vendors. It kicks off Wednesday, June 9th, and will run through Friday, June 11th. National Pork Producers Council President Jen Sorensen joining us now. And Jen, how excited are folks for the return of World Pork Expo?
Not be more excited to be having a World Pork Expo this year. After a 2-year hiatus, we are back here in Des Moines, planning and preparation for 2.5 big days out at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. So you hit it. We have over 700 suppliers and vendors, and we anticipate a large registration and showing and turnout of our producers across the U.S. who want to come to Des Moines and hear about that new innovation, new products, new services being offered to the U.S. pork industry, but also recognizing the fellowship and camaraderie we have as pork producers. I think we're excited to see everyone.
You know, this is, I think technically will be the 33rd annual event, and talk a little bit about missing out on kind of the relationship and the relationship building and everything else that goes along with World Pork Expo that folks get to enjoy as having a meeting like this.
That's right. You know, a big part of our industry, rooted in our culture, is fellowship. And we help each other out as pork producers. And, you know, we really rely on our vendors and our suppliers to help us get better as producers. And we need those products and we need those services. And we're just really looking forward to seeing everyone. This is a big show, a big revenue generator for the National Pork Producers Council. We had to, in light of the onset of the threat of African swine fever, we canceled it the first year, and last year, of course, was the COVID pandemic. But we've made some changes to our show this year. We've sadly taken away the live pig show, which brought on quite a bit of risk when it comes to disease transmission, and made some adjustments from a human health and COVID standpoint as well. And so we're looking forward to having a safe and biosecure World Pork Expo here over the next 2.5 days.
You know, one of the things that World Pork Expo always affords is opportunity for learning, really getting in and digging into some of the issues facing pork producers, not just here at home, but around the world. Let's talk about a few of the issues as the NPPC president that you're dealing with right now. Maybe one of the biggest ones is this line speed ruling that came out that's impacting how fast pork is processed through some of our packers, including Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley just today telling reporters that he plans to send a letter to USDA and the Department of Justice asking for an appeal of that ruling, and also saying it could lead to a $23 per head decline in hog prices. This is a pretty big issue and very important.
He's absolutely right. It's our top priority right now. Yeah, Dermot Hayes estimates that we could lose 2.5% of our pork capacity, which doesn't sound like a lot, but these plants that do follow that faster line speed are very regionalized. So producers that supply into those 6 specific plants, those plants could see a 25% capacity reduction, which is a lot. And we look about what happened last fall and last spring with COVID and the backing up of animals. We do not want to be in that situation again. We also think that this will disproportionately impact smaller farmers who will potentially lose their contracts and be faced with force majeures and not be able to deliver those hogs into those packing plants. So it's been our top issue this past month.
How hopeful are you that we're going to see this get resolved? Obviously, going to continue the fight here until we get some sort of final judgment.
We have a lot of all hands on deck working on this issue, including our members of Congress like Senator Grassley. Right now, we're working through a solution with the labor unions, with USDA, with the packing plants, and with the pork producers who will be impacted. So hopefully we will come to a compromise here soon.
Absolutely. One of the other things that's kind of been filtering through future impacts to the pork industry is this Proposition 12 issue out of California. Tell us where that stands and why that is such a big issue.
Prop 12 is extremely problematic because it forces very prescriptive production regulations on pork producers, not only inside the state of California, but outside the state of California. And these very prescriptive measures call for removal of breeding stalls, which we utilize to protect our sows. We utilize it for animal welfare and care of that sow, and also dictate square footage regulations, which have no bearing or impact on what we believe are good animal care and measures for our animals. So very problematic. This is directly against the Interstate Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And we have joined together with the American Farm Bureau to sue the state of California. We're hoping to hear back in July on whether that case will advance forward, but we're very optimistic and hopeful.
All right, so many issues, so many big issues impacting pork producers, but again, I know you mentioned the pandemic and all of the things that producers have gone through over the last year, year and a half, and just to have Expo back, it seems like, hey, that's a pretty exciting advancement this year and something to celebrate.
I think it really is. I think it shows the resiliency of our industry, that we're still here. We made it through the pandemic. Our market prices are a lot higher. You know, we are looking at higher feed costs right now, but the market has rebounded. There's a lot more optimism. Our domestic demand is strong, our export demand is strong, and we're very hopeful and optimistic about the future of the pork industry and cannot wait to see everyone at the World Pork Expo.
All right, Jen Sorensen, president of NPPC, thank you so much for being here and joining us for Farm Journal Live today. Sure appreciate the insights.
Thank you.
And have fun. Enjoy yourself. All right, well, one of the things she did mention was producer profits, and of course, lean hog prices are pretty good, but futures prices now in the $120 range per hundred. The Sterling Profit Tracker out today showing that producers saw margins of $91 per head, about $20 lower than a month ago. But compare that to a year ago in the height of the pandemic when margins were at a loss of $57 per head. Now, Arlan Suderman, StoneX, joining us now. They're from Kansas City on the trading floor. Arlan, let's talk about hog markets and what seems to be driving these prices today, because they are pretty decent compared especially to a year ago.
Yeah, and then if you look longer term, our prices are getting close to where they were back in 2014 when we set record highs. Those record highs were set because of disease in a hog herd, which reduces supply. That's not the problem now. It is strong demand that is lifting those prices, and that's a much better place to be. Quite encouraging to see the strength, as was just mentioned, in both domestic and export demand supporting these markets.
Yeah. Arlan, let's talk about some of the export demand. Obviously, this whole African swine fever in China has been a big issue over the last couple of years. Where do we stand right now with kind of how that picture looks and what our expectations are going through Q3, Q4 of this year?
Yeah, China was doing an amazing job of coming back after the African swine fever epidemic, and as we got into December of last year, we started seeing a new variant of the disease kind of going through hog herds. We cannot confirm it because China doesn't release much of any type of official information, but it's believed to be a new variant that came from an illegal vaccine that was actually injecting hogs in some of these commercial operations with the disease. And so it started taking numbers of sows down once again, and we believe is down. It affected the northern areas first, then in the southern areas, starting to stabilize now, starting to turn the corner in resuming the rebuild. We believe it's about 80% of pre-ASF levels now. but the price of hogs is down dramatically, and that's a risk to our exports right now, is how much the price of pork has fallen. As we saw a lot of hogs get liquidated, other farmers are holding on to hogs, hoping that the bottom would come into market and they could get higher prices. Now they're dumping those heavier weight hogs on the market. So we're seeing this flush of pork, expecting shortages later this year, which would be good for exports into China. But near term, we're expecting a flush of supply, which could hurt demand. And we saw this on the weekly export sales report last week, where sales really slowed to China. And we're anticipating longer term that they're going to do a good job of rebuilding, get close to pre-ASF levels as we get into early 2022.
All right. Hey, Arlen, let's talk. I know Jen mentioned, some of the feed cost challenges that producers are having right now. Obviously, that's a pretty big concern. Talk to me about how those margins are being impacted by the price of grain.
Tremendously. If we didn't have these high prices, of course, we'd be culling herds. And it certainly is, I think, slowing the growth of the hog herd at this point. And as we look at feed prices reached 8-year highs as we got into the month of May, does that mean that we're done? I know every hog producer is wanting to know that. In this type of environment with a short corn crop in Brazil, and USDA will be confirming that over the next couple of months, we see a dramatically short crop there. If we have a short crop in the United States, and that's a huge if, we don't know yet, it's still very early, we could blow up this corn balance sheet. And that could create a lot of problems, not only for corn, but for meal prices as well. So there's significant upside risks in those feeds. That means those margins, while they may be good now because of high lean hog prices, there's still a considerable risk. And so risk management is going to be of the utmost going forward.
It seems like that's kind of been the mantra over the last couple of years, just trying to manage some of the risk in these markets and take advantage when we can. Arlen, appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back tomorrow to talk on Ag Day and discuss a little bit more about some of these hog markets and kind of what's been carrying through in the story there. But before we do that, of course, we want to remind everybody to join us for Pork Week this week. You can follow along as we celebrate the return of the World Pork Expo. We'll have daily reports on Ag Day, including an in-depth look at the industry this weekend on U.S. Farm Report. And of course, our friends over at AgriTalk will be talking pork all week as well. And for the very latest, head over to porkbusiness.com for continuous coverage and updates all week for Pork Week. And of course, we want to thank you for spending a little time with us today. I'm Farm Journal editor Clinton Griffiths. I hope you have a great afternoon.